Hello friends, welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're going to make a chocolate fudge cake. So everything you see on my counter is what we're going to use to make this chocolate fudge cake, and we're going to make the cake and the icing from scratch. This means everything is made at home. We're not getting this from a store, we're not getting pre-made mix, we're just going to do it on our own. And what you're going to end up with here is kind of a fudgy chocolate cake where the cake itself is dense. It's kind of like almost brownie quality, but on top of it the icing has this amazing sweet taste that is just a pleasure to eat. And we're going to go ahead and get started by preheating our oven to 350 degrees, and then we're going to actually have this in there for about 35-40 minutes. Then in a bowl we're going to add 1 3/4 cup of sugar, and then we're going to add a cup of melted butter, and we're going to use our mixer to mix this together, get it kind of light and fluffy blended before we do anything else to this. So once we get it going, after you blended this probably for about a minute or so, we'll go ahead and add the next ingredients, which the next two things going in are 2 eggs. So go ahead and mix this up really well. Make sure that all of that sugar is beaten into the butter, and then we'll get ready to go to the next part. So we're going to put our eggs in one at a time, and we're going to let this keep going with the mixer so that way everything is still being blended from before, but we're adding the new as well. And go ahead and make sure these eggs are really incorporated in before we add our milk to this. And when we go to add our milk, we're going to have 1.5 cups of milk that we're going to put in. So what I'm doing is I have my milk split into 2 containers, which I'm dumping them in one at a time, and this way it's just going to keep mixing in as we go as we're pouring them in. And we're going to keep mixing this until everything is completely mixed together, because we want everything incorporated: the sugar, the butter, the eggs, the milk. We want it all in a really good fluffy mixture. And then when we're done with this, we'll set it aside, and we're going to actually go after this to the dry mixture that's going to be in our next bowl. And again, you're going to need a large bowl, because in this we're adding 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and then to this we're adding 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 cup of cocoa. And what we're going to do is take a whisk and just mix this together, so that way everything is mixed through, especially like the baking powder. We want to make sure that hits all through the flour and everything else. And then afterwards, we're going to set that to the side, and we have here 3/4 of a cup of chocolate. You can use any kind you want. And then we have 1/4 of a cup of milk. So what we're going to do is heat this chocolate in the microwave until it starts to melt, and then we're going to pour that 1/4 of a cup of milk into it, and we're going to stir it until it completely mixes together and becomes like a chocolate sauce. So you're going to have to stir this for a minute to get it to go there, but once you do, it'll be completely mixed together and it'll be ready to go into our wet mixture. So as you can see, the more I stir this, the more it's starting to mix through with the milk. And it won't take long before it's ready for it to be totally ready to go into the wet mixture. And as you can see, when mine's mixed together, it looks a lot like this. So we're going to pour the entire thing into our wet mix, and then we're going to blend this with our mixer. Just scrape out every bit that you can from your bowl. We don't want to waste any of this. Now, as I said, once this is in completely into your bowl, you're going to go ahead and mix this in, and it's totally going to change the color of what's in your bowl, which means we're headed towards chocolate cake time. So just make sure all of this is incorporated. And it won't take but a minute to do this. And then we're going to pour half of this into our dry mixture, and we're going to start actually mixing this up. The reason I say put about half of it in at first is that way, once we go to actually mix this up, it's not going to be throwing it all over the place. You can kind of mix in a little at a time to get it to a state where it's easier to work with, instead of throwing everything all over, like, you know, the cocoa powder or flour flying all over the place. It's still going to do it a little bit, but still, if you put in half and then come back and put in the other half, it just makes it a little easier to deal with. So go ahead and mix this until you get all of it completely ready to go into the pans for the oven. You're just going to keep going until you get everything off the sides of your bowl, or as much as you can. Go across the bottom, get everything incorporated in until this is a nice decent mix ready for going in. Now I have my pans here. I am oiling them because this is what I do. I don't trust nonstick, never have, because usually it sticks on me when I do. And I'm putting some flour in here to coat the pan. You can use cocoa powder if you want. You totally have a choice on this, because once you put it in, there is like usually no chance this is ever going to stick on you, and this is a good thing to do. So if you haven't already preheated your oven to 350 degrees, you need to do it now. And we're going to be in there, like I said, about 35 to 40 minutes. And you're going to take the mix and put it into your pans and even it out like I did here. And then they're ready to go into the oven. And as I said, after they've been in there for about 35 minutes, I checked them. It may take a little longer, because I use large pans with these. Mine were the extra large, like I think they're 9-inch wide. And then when they're baked, they come back looking like this. And we want to set these to the side to let them cool before we do anything else in our mix, because we're going to make our icing now. And as you can see, I have everything I need here on the counter to make this. So you're going to need a large pot to put on the stove, and we're going to put this at like medium high to do what we need to do with this. And inside of it, you're going to put a stick of butter in there to let it start melting. So go ahead and mix that around, get it going so that way it can melt down. And then it's not going to take that long for it to melt. That's why I did not break mine up. It really doesn't have to be done that way. And then you're going to add 2 cups of sugar, which we're going to keep stirring this through to get it going. And after you've had this in there for about like, you know, a minute or so, you're going to totally have it ready to be all completely mixed together. And then we'll be ready to add our cocoa, which we're going to put 6 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And then to this, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And once you get this in here, you want to mix it up a bit, get it going to where it almost looks like a fudgy consistency. And then we are going to add a can of evaporated milk to this. So stir this up, keep going with it as you're adding in the milk. And we're going to bring the temperature up in this because we want to bring it to a boil. And once you get this kind of boiling, you do not want to walk away from this, because it will try to cook up and come over the sides of your pot. So keep doing it, keep stirring it. And the whole thing is, once you get it to a boil, you want to keep this in there for about 12 to 14 minutes or so to make sure that it sets up, because we want to make this get thicker. And as you cook this, it will start to feel like it's thickening, like a pudding consistency. And that's kind of good. It's going to be runny wet, but it's still going to be thick. Like, you know, if you cook pudding and you set it to the side to thicken after it's done, that's kind of the same process we're using here. So what I do is I would go all the way up to 14 minutes on this to make sure that it's going to set up right. Then pull it off of the heat, stir it periodically, and just let it cool down a little bit before you put it on the cake. Because what you're going to do is pour a little over top of your cake. Like if you're going to do a stack thing, like I use 2 cake pans, I'll pour some in the center, let it cool for a second, put the second layer of cake on, then pour some of this on top, let it cool a little, spread it out. Pour on a little bit more, spread it out until you get to a point where you get it to the edge and you can actually work it down around the sides and get this whole cake coated, because this is going to thicken as it sits, and it's going to be like really great tasting, because it's basically like making a very light fudge. It's going to be a little runny, but it's not going to run all over your cake as it cools, because as you set it up, it will actually stay where you put it. But you have to let it cool. And I put mine in the fridge after I get all the icing on it, because if the refrigerator cools it down enough to where it stays in place till it sets up completely, and then you have this fudgy outside to your cake. And then all you have to do, like I said, is smear it around the edges, take it over the top, and it'll look something like this when it's done. And this is an amazing cake to eat, but it is really rich. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out my cookbooks, which are available in bookstores worldwide. The first is about everyday cooking. The second is all about baking. Have a great day.